I would like to add a personal word with regard to an issue that has been of great concern to all Americans over the past year. I refer, of course, to the investigations of the so-called Watergate affair. As you know, I have provided to the special prosecutor voluntarily a great deal of material. I believe that I have provided all the material that he needs to conclude his investigations and to proceed to prosecute the guilty and to clear the innocent. I believe the time has come to bring that investigation and the other investigations of this matter to an end. 1 year of Watergate is enough.
That was President Richard Nixon during his 1974 State of the Union address, which was delivered less than a year into Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox's investigation into the Watergate scandal. Nixon would later resign the presidency, facing the threat of impeachment by the House and conviction in the Senate. It would come after a number of the president's aides were indicted for conspiring to hinder the investigation. 45 years later, former Nixon campaign employee Roger Stone found himself in the crosshairs of another special counsel's investigation. Earlier this month, Stone became the latest Trump associate to be indicted by Robert Mueller. According to investigators, Stone shared information with the Trump campaign about leaked Democratic Party emails. Information from those emails was reportedly released during the 2016 presidential campaign in an attempt to damage the candidacy of Hillary Clinton. But in a recent interview with Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan, President Trump appeared to distance himself from Stone and reiterated his claims that Robert Mueller's investigation is a witch hunt.
First of all, Roger Stone didn't work on the campaign, except way at the beginning, long before we're talking about. Roger is somebody that I've always liked, but a lot of people liked Roger. Some people probably don't like Roger, but Roger Stone's somebody I've always liked. I mean, Roger's a character. But Roger was not, I don't know if you know this or not, Roger wasn't on my campaign, except way at the beginning.
Right.
So it's all, and yet you will ask me a question like that. Wasn't involved in my campaign. Okay. So far, this thing's been a total witch hunt, and it doesn't implicate me in any way. There was no collusion, there was no obstruction, there was no nothing. Doesn't implicate me in any way, but I think it's a disgrace.
Let's bring in CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reed, CBSN legal contributor and former assistant U.S. attorney in New York's Eastern District, Keir Dugal, CBSN legal contributor and former assistant district attorney for the New York County District Attorney's Office, Rebecca Roiphe, and Nick Thompson. He's a CBS News contributor and the editor-in-chief of Wired. Welcome to you all. Before we get to the latest in the Mueller investigation, CBS News has obtained the subpoena for the presidential inaugural committee. Paula, what more do we know?
Well, right now I've been reading through the subpoena for the past few minutes, Elaine, and it's amazing. This is a sweeping subpoena. They want every chart, every graph, every document, every text message related to the inaugural committee. They want to know how this committee raised $107 million and how they spent it. Now, specifically in this subpoena, they are looking for any information about foreign donations. They're especially interested in that because it's illegal for foreign entities to contribute to inaugural funds, and they are also looking at whether or not any foreign entities tried to gain favor or even leverage over the incoming administration through generous donations. So as the Russia investigation is sort of wrapping up, these other investigations are clearly, by the looks of this subpoena, heating up.
So given those details, Rebecca and Keir, Rebecca, let me start with you. What do you make of this subpoena?
I think it's a pretty big deal. It pretty much confirms what people have been saying, that even when the Mueller investigation wraps up, Donald Trump faces a fairly serious investigation from the Southern District of New York. Michael Cohen has been cooperating with prosecutors there. The number of crimes that they're looking into is huge, and you know, this is a big question. Where did this money come from? Where did it go? And you know, how is it possible that there were so few events and such a massive amount of money spent?
Keir, what do you think?
So we already know that there are concerns about an individual named Sam Patton who used a straw purchaser to funnel money to buy tickets from Russian-related folks to get tickets for this inaugural. The subpoena itself, it says that they're investigating fraud and money laundering. With that much money running through an inaugural committee, there are potentially really big concerns over what happened.
Turning back to the Mueller investigation, Paula, where is that investigation at this point?
Well, according to Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, the investigation is wrapping up. Now, he oversees currently the investigation. If he is still in office, he's the one who will receive Mueller's final report. He has a final say over any charges that are brought as long as he's in office. But Elaine, there are other indications to corroborate his assessment that this is all wrapping up. In fact, if you look at the prosecution of Roger Stone, you see that from the beginning of this case, the special counsel is working with prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office. That is significant because that's the first time we've seen the special counsel bring a case in that manner. And if the special counsel's office wraps up and winds down, it would be easy for them to pass off the Roger Stone case to the U.S. attorneys to carry to its conclusion. So there are several indications that while there's still a little bit more that we do expect will happen in this investigation, based on some activity we've seen with the grand jury, it does appear that Acting Attorney General Whitaker is correct that this may be wrapping up.
So, Nick, what have we learned from the amount of data that the special counsel's investigators have actually collected here?
Well, they've collected a crazy amount of data,
Yeah.
which is why it's been this all-consuming national drama for the last 2 years, and with 300 interconnected storylines, all kinds of characters. But the central bit of the data is it showed an extraordinary effort by the Russians to influence our election. And Mueller's documents on how the Russians operated, and he only has published a portion of what we know. He's basically taken one half of the Russian investigation, the GRU investigations, but not the FSB operations, and published what we know. So learning all of that has been extraordinary. The other thing I'll say, what we've learned from the data, the Trump people are really bad at protecting their devices. Like Paul Manafort doesn't know how to use track changes. He doesn't know how to redact documents. He used Bond 007 on all of his passwords. You know, Roger Stone let his WhatsApp communications be busted, and that's end-to-end encrypted. That's kind of hard to mess that up. So that's
We're
just
not the most secure.
just another side thing, which is added. That's partly why we have so much information.
Right. Right. Keir, what are some of the big open questions that Bob Mueller has to answer, do you think, before he can end this investigation?
So Nick just got at a bunch of them. So there are a bunch of transcripts in the Congress of witnesses that I think Mr. Mueller is going to be very interested in. There is a search that was executed in connection with Roger Stone's arrest, and so there are all those devices that he's going to want to look at. So that's just a large amount of material. Plus, we don't know. We haven't sort of put this thing together end to end. We know that the Russians were putting stuff out there, and we know that Roger Stone and perhaps others with the Trump campaign were gladly accepting it or wanting it, or seeking it. But we haven't bridged that gap, and we don't fully know yet what happened at the Trump Tower meeting, where there was an overt offer directly to active campaign officials. So I believe there's a lot of threads that are still hanging.
Well, Rebecca, how important is it for Mueller to answer the question about the scope here of Russian involvement in this hacking? How does he do that?
Well, I think it's very important. That's what everybody wants to know, which is, how has Russia done this and how was it received? I think it's a little bit concerning for Mueller because he has to be careful about national security, and so he wants to do it in such a way as he preserves whatever our strategy is, so that we can continue to use it.
So on that point, Paula, how much of Mueller's final report will actually be made public here?
Probably not enough to satisfy House Democrats. They have said anything short of the full report will prompt them likely to issue subpoenas for the report or special counsel Robert Mueller. But ultimately, it is up to the Attorney General. If it's Acting Attorney General Whitaker who receives this report, he makes the decision. But it is more likely that it will be Attorney General nominee William Barr. And he has given us some insight into how much he intends to release. During his confirmation hearings, he said that he wants to be as transparent as possible. But Elaine, the law does not require him to release anything in this report. So what we can likely expect is that he will either release his own summary or release a redacted version of the report, because much of this report will likely be confidential information. evidence that did not necessarily support criminal charges, but was gathered in the course of this investigation. And traditionally, confidential information like that is held pretty closely within the Justice Department. And Barr has signaled that he intends to protect that confidential information. So I do expect a summary, but again, House Democrats will not settle for anything less than the full report. So unless they release the full report, it is likely that the report and/or the special counsel will be subpoenaed.
And Paula, you know as well as anyone, the president has used the term witch hunt over and over again to describe this investigation. It would seem unlikely that the president's going to raise this tonight.
Yes, I would be very surprised. By raising it in this platform, you give this more legitimacy and you call more attention to the fact that your campaign is under investigation. Now your inaugural committee is under investigation. Members of your administration are part of some of those investigations. And the president himself, while he tends to deny this, he is currently under investigation by the special counsel for possible obstruction of justice. And he is also potentially implicated in another criminal investigation in the Southern District of New York, where America Media Incorporated, the publisher of the National Enquirer, its CEO, and the president's former personal attorney have all suggested that the president may have violated campaign finance laws by coordinating an effort to pay hush money to women to keep quiet about their alleged affairs. So there just doesn't seem to be any incentive for the president to bring up the Mueller investigation or any of these other ones tonight.
I imagine, Nick, though, Democrats will certainly be thinking about it, or at least it will be looming over the president's State of the Union address, given that we now have House Democrats, the Democrats in charge in the House.
I honestly think that like 40% of the Democratic party wakes up and starts thinking about Robert Mueller and like goes to sleep thinking about Robert Mueller. So the fact that they'll be thinking about Robert Mueller tonight is like not that different. Okay. But yes.
Okay. All right. Paula Reed, Keir Dougal, Rebecca Roife, and Nick Thompson, my thanks to you all.